everybody, my name is Jasmine Hardy, and we're super thrilled to have you here with us tonight, or today, depending on where you are. We're really excited to be able to talk to you about QuestBridge. We think that many of you are familiar with what QuestBridge is. Many of you probably attended the QuestBridge conferences over the summer, but we're really excited to be able to take time as a group of 6 institutions and answer whatever questions you might have. So as you may be familiar with some of our schools, all of our schools, or none of our schools, I just want to give you a brief overview of what our schools represent. So the reason that we are doing this together is that our 6 institutions, Amherst, Bowdoin, Carleton, Pomona, Swarthmore, and Williams, all have very similar shared goals around supporting low-income and traditionally underrepresented students. So our schools are all small liberal arts colleges. We're located across the country, and some of the trademarks of our education are, one, that you are in a community that is entirely undergraduate based. So you are not in a large, huge university. You are in a smaller setting where you're in small classes, where you get to know your faculty members well, you develop personal relationships with them. On all of our campuses, the majority of students live on campus their entire undergraduate career. So you're able to build bonds both inside and outside of the classroom. We also are liberal arts schools. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with what that means. And what a liberal arts degree and education is an opportunity for you to learn across disciplines. Our goal as liberal arts institutions is to have our students graduate as lifelong learners, that our students are coming to our institutions, they are figuring out what they're interested in, they might know exactly what they want to study, and they're in an academic program that allows them to think broadly, but also do really in-depth research, right? So we have these educational programs. All of our programs tend to be bachelor's degrees, and we have a diverse array of academic offerings. We don't have pre-professional programs, right? But we do have the liberal arts alternatives to whatever that pre-professional program might be. So we really want our students to come, be able to explore the academics that they are interested in, and learn in a very sort of broad and deep way, depending on what your interests are. We as 6 schools like to do this together because we share those goals, and we like to be able to sort of join forces and help you think critically about whether a liberal arts education might be something that's valuable to you. So today what we're going to do is, again, many of you are familiar with what QuestBridge is, but we want to go through some of the steps and talk through some of the process pieces with you. You might have learned about this, again, at the conference or previously, but we know that QuestBridge can be a complicated and amazing process, and so we want to be able to support you in that process. So we'll talk about what it is. We'll go through the National College Match process. We'll also talk about what non-matched finalists can do. There are a lot of steps even beyond the match, and so we want to outline some of those for you so that you can be thinking about all of the different possibilities for yourself. And like Carolyn mentioned, we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So as a brief overview, so as you know, QuestBridge is dedicated to supporting low-income, traditionally underrepresented students, right? QuestBridge has been around since 1994, and in that time, QuestBridge has served thousands and thousands of students. All of our campuses have many, many QuestBridge students on campus, and that includes matched finalists and non-matched finalists. That includes students who have been affiliated with QuestBridge. We really are, all of our campuses are seeking ways to support students who are totally qualified and well prepared to succeed at our institutions. And QuestBridge helps provide a connection for us, right? So we really enjoy working with QuestBridge. We're happy to be able to go through this process with you. And thank you for coming and learning about all that we have to offer and QuestBridge has to offer.
So, hi everyone, my name is Ryan Ricciardi. I am here from Bowdoin College, and I, like the rest of my friends and colleagues here, am delighted to be here with you tonight. This is one of my favorite parts of my job, is spending time with students, and we don't get to do that in the same way that we used to. So I'm really grateful that you took the time to be here tonight. This slide shows you the 42 QuestBridge partner schools that are out there. And QuestBridge exists as an organization, right, to draw a connection between selective institutions and students who might otherwise not have all of the information and access to the information that we want to share, right? And so this is a really wonderful opportunity to really dig in to the research, the offerings, the financial aid of all of these institutions. And there are lots of different types of schools here, right? We are all representing liberal arts colleges, liberal arts and sciences colleges here tonight, but there are large universities, there are small universities, and so the real delight of all of this is that there's opportunity for everyone to decide where you're going to thrive. And QuestBridge is about opening those avenues of access to institutions like ours. And we are really embracing the idea that there isn't one right way to learn, right? There isn't one right style of education that fits everybody. And so here's an opportunity to really think about all the different opportunities that QuestBridge College partners have to offer. There are lots of you can be a part of the QuestBridge network for a very long time, from the time that you're in high school thinking about taking classes, preparing for what you're going to think about studying, to the time that you're ready to apply to college, and are thinking about how to access the resources, right? How to ask for recommendations, how to write your college essay, to the time that you are in college and are part of our QuestBridge Scholar Network, to the time that you are an alum of our colleges, but also of QuestBridge. And so, as the slide at the beginning sort of showed, there are tens of thousands of people who have been touched by QuestBridge. And that means that there are huge opportunities to reach out and really get somebody else's perspective on the path and the journey that you're on, and really feel supported by the institutions that are working with QuestBridge, by QuestBridge itself, but also the people who are really affected by this style of education. One of the really important things that we're going to talk about tonight are the different avenues you can use through QuestBridge to access all of our institutions, and the way that you are going to be able to afford to go to these colleges, which is a huge question, right? And it can look like a huge barrier. And I promise that we are here tonight and talking about QuestBridge and talking with you because we want there to be no barriers between your experience with QuestBridge and your time at our institution, and really thriving in all of that. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to my colleague from Pomona, Carolyn.
Hey everyone. So now we're going to talk about the National Match Program and what's really important about there, and understanding how Ryan was just saying there are a lot of different avenues. This specific avenue is how you will become a QuestBridge Match Scholar, someone who goes to an institution, depending on each institution and the support that you would have of being a QuestBridge Match Scholar. All of our institutions meet 100% of need, but there is a little bit of a nuance to also being a QuestBridge Match Scholar at these. And so now my colleague at Carleton, Remy, will be walking us through what that looks like.
Sure. Yeah, so here's the big thing to take away from this slide. There are a lot of ways to be involved with QuestBridge at our institutions, right? I think it's really common for students to think about QuestBridge equaling the match and only the match, right? And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around what that actually entails, right? So I really want you to take a peek at this and sort of look at the different ways to be involved with QuestBridge at our institutions. It's also really important to note that all of us, and I would imagine every single QuestBridge partner school, has a ton of QuestBridge affiliated students, or Questies, as many of us call you, on our campuses that did not come through the match round, right? If you decide the match round is not for you, that's fine, right? If you decide the match round is great but don't get matched, that's also okay. There are still a lot of options for you, right? So take a look at sort of the scope of this slide, but also take a peek at how many ways there are to get from one point to another, right? Maybe you think you want to do the match and then you rank everybody and then you decide, nope, I'm going to be a non-participating finalist, right? Maybe you opt for the match and don't get matched, but then a school says, hey, you should really apply ED here. You are great. We loved your application. And you end up at that school with a financial package that is comparable to what you would have received through the match round, right? I think it's one, again, a misconception to think the match is the only process, but two, to think that the match round is the only way that you're going to get a great financial aid package at a lot of these colleges, right? One thing QuestBridge partners have in common, all of us, not just the 6 that are represented on this Zoom call, is that there's a lot of money, right, at these institutions, right? And a huge chunk of those dollars is set aside for financial aid, right? So it is not uncommon at any of these institutions, again, not just the 6 of us, to see students who applied through QuestBridge who maybe didn't get matched, but who have financial aid that's as great as what they would have received in the match round, okay? So again, there's a lot to take in here, but a lot of paths to, I guess, QuestBridge related victory in that sense. I coach when I'm not in admission, so pardon that that sentence. So let's chat through the timeline, right? Like equally complex. There's a lot to take in here, okay? The first thing I want you to note, the application technically closes at the end of September every single year, and I'm sure my colleagues will agree with me. I get frantic, panicked emails from students on the day that the application closes saying something happened, like my laptop died, or I had to go somewhere, there was a family emergency or something, right? If I can give you some tangible, concrete advice, which is what I'm going to try to do rather than just sort of walk you through the timeline, I would say this: take that date, right? The date that the application is due, subtract a day from it, right? Like make sure the last thing you submit in terms of your initial application comes ahead of the deadline, so that if you run into issues, right, whether they're issues with your application or issues with a website or issues with our website, you give yourself a little bit of a buffer, okay? Please, like this is already a stressful enough process, right? Like there's a lot that goes into QuestBridge, right? I think if there's a downside to the QuestBridge application, it's that, gosh, it takes more time and more work and more energy, right, to fill out than, a common app or a coalition app or perhaps something comparable, right? So do yourself a favor, give yourself a buffer, okay? If you have time to be working on all of this now, many of you have started school already, right? And this is something we don't talk enough about, I think, in admissions. Like, just because you're applying to college doesn't mean the rest of your life stops, right? Like there's still classes, there's still homework, there's still part-time jobs, there's still siblings who need help, there's still chores that need to be done. There's a lot, right? So give yourself that buffer, okay? In several weeks, you'll get to select up to 12 schools for the match. Again, 12 is not required. And I know there was a question in the Q&A about how many schools you might decide to rank. Here's what I would say about your initial rankings. Keep in mind they're tentative, right? So don't put a ton of stress on yourself at the start thinking, I need to know the exact order. I really like Bowdoin, but gosh, like, I also really like Pomona. Like, don't stress, right? Like you have time to figure that out. What I would say is that you should really make the most of this list at the beginning, right? You can remove schools later on. You cannot add schools later on, right? So if you are not sure, fill up those max 12 spots, right? And remember, you can reorder them or remove schools from that list later on, okay? But every year there are students that I talk to, and again, I'm sure my colleagues could say the same, who chat with me and say like, oh shucks, like I didn't put you on my initial list, and now I'm really, really bummed about that because you can't add us later on, okay? QuestBridge will do their thing, right? Delivering all the information to us. We'll spend a lot of time sort of in solitude in our homes reading, right? Like that's a daily thing for admissions officers now. I have a lot of conversations with my couch, so we'll keep doing that, right? As we read through applications, okay? If we look forward to November, okay? There is gonna be something for all of you to do, right? Like we get that initial batch of information from you, but then there's all this sort of supplemental stuff, right? Like as big as this process is, again, I think it's bigger than most students realize, because on top of the application, some of us will say, hey, this is a weird year, but normally we'd say, hey, submit test scores for some of us, right? Many of us will say, hey, we need a supplement from you, right? There's also financial aid documents that we need, right? same thing. Don't wait until the deadline, right? And part of this is because one, glitches happen, but two, the turnaround time, if you look at what the colleges are doing in the right-hand side of all these tables, the turnaround time for us is really, really fast, right? So if we are missing something from you, take into account, right, the amount of time it takes us to email you or call you or text you, right? It might take several days for you to get back to us. And then as we're going back and forth, like, there's really not a lot of time. Once the momentum gets going in this process, there's not a ton of time, okay? So again, the more you can be proactive about all of this stuff and do it ahead of time, the better. So keep in mind, you get the option, I mentioned this before, to sort of rearrange or remove colleges, right, after you submit that initial list. And then once you've done all of that, QuestBridge will do their thing, right? They'll give us really sad news and say, hey, some of the students withdrew, right? And we'll shed some tears and then we'll move on, right? Knowing that you've got all the schools you're really excited about on that list. And then right around the time that the Thanksgiving holiday hits, we'll be in touch with QuestBridge, right? We send them our list saying, hey, these are the students we'd like to match with. QuestBridge will do their thing, and I say their thing because we don't really know what their thing is, right? Like, QuestBridge is really intentional about not telling us how they do the thing that they do, right? In terms of actually creating the match. And I think students ask a lot of questions about this. And it seems like there's sort of this shroud of secrecy around it a little bit. And in some ways that's true. But when students ask us, will I be penalized for this? Or how do I maximize my chances here? We don't actually know on the college end all the ins and outs of how students are paired with colleges, right? So all I can tell you is that it happens. We take into account, I assume, right? QuestBridge takes into account your rankings as well as our rankings, and then those matches are made, right? Thousands of students every year. Early December is match day, right? So QuestBridge will reach out to you and say, hey, either you were matched or, sorry, you weren't matched. Be prepared. I think, again, this is something students don't always anticipate. Colleges might reach out to you immediately, right? One, if you're matched, right? To say, hey, congrats, you were matched. But even if you weren't matched, right? To say, hey, you are terrific, right? Like, you would be a really great fit at our college. Have you considered this other option, right? And sometimes that other option is an early decision round, right? Which is committal in the same sort of, well, in a similar sense to the QuestBridge match round, right? You can only do it with one school. But something to be aware of, right? Think about that proactively if you can. It's hard because we're telling you to think about a lot of things, right? We're saying, think about the match round, but also, like, don't forget there's other options after that, but also there's regular decisions. There's a lot, and we know this. I guess flat out, just don't be surprised if schools reach out, right? Even though it's a bummer that the match didn't work out, don't forget, like, you have additional options, especially if you want to commit to one school early. Okay, and then specifically for those of you who do not match, right? Like, everything that happens before December is the same. Everything that happens before match day is the same, right? Like, you submit everything, you do your rankings, right? If you're not getting the news that you want on December 2nd, again, keep in mind, you have more options, right? If you opt to not go with early decision, and for some of you, that may not be the right choice, or the school of your dreams may not have an early decision round, right? And that's totally fine too. The difference here is that if you pursue early decision after the match round, it's with one school, right? It's not this sort of, I guess, sandbox approach of like 12 schools, let's see which one I pick out of the bag if I match, right? So keep that in mind. It's not the right choice for everybody, right? Regular decision is a great option for that. And again, many of us, right, end up bringing a lot of QuestBridge applicants to our institutions through regular decision. QuestBridge will reach out to you in mid-December to say, hey, let's finalize that list. Who do you want us to send materials to? Please pay attention to that. I think sometimes after the match round, right, I realize there's a lot of disappointment, right, if you're not matched. And I think sometimes students can stop paying attention to those emails, but you're going to make your life a lot easier, and our life a lot easier too, to just get through those next steps, right? Like, keep that momentum going. Even if the match didn't work out, let's take care of what needs to be done to make you a really stellar applicant for regular decision, okay? Schools are still going to be following up about supplementary materials, right? So those emails will continue to come. And then hopefully you get lots of really good news in March and April, and you end up maybe at one of these QuestBridge schools later on, right? After May 1st, or who knows what that date will be this coming year in light of the pandemic. But after students do all their deposits, QuestBridge will reach out to us, right, to chat about how many students we have, whether those students came through the match round or regular decision, et cetera. And then they'll use all of the data that they've collected in the prior year to sort of hone their own process so that we all get better at working with students through this very difficult process in the future.
So we've definitely been throwing around a lot of words that may not necessarily be common in other ways of applying to the college: finalist, non-match finalist, match finalist, withdrawal. So we just really wanted to explain what all of these mean. And as you saw in the flow chart earlier, all of these have different paths to the college that you're looking to apply to. So if you're a finalist, this comes from students who applied to the match, typically QuestBridge prep scholars who are interested, and there are a lot of names that start off in this very big funnel, and then it kind of gets culled down to the finalist. The finalists are students who can choose to end up being matched, or they can not be matched. And so once you're in this finalist pool, it's, oh, I have the opportunity to rank the schools, and the schools, the match process, my colleague likes to call it like the dating process. Like, we want to date you and you want to date us, and you want to, both you and the institution that you're looking to rank has to kind of go all in and say, we're really interested in this student. And sometimes, you know, it may not work out, and that's when the non-match finalist comes into. A non-finalist is someone who applies to the match program, is still really great, but they may not fit the academic criteria or the financial criteria for each institution. And my colleague from Williams is going to talk about the financial piece that comes to what it means to be a finalist for each institution, because a lot of young people who are applying through the QuestBridge prep or the QuestBridge application are really exciting, and they're great, and we're super stoked to see them in our pool, but they may have a family contribution that's a little bit too high and might not be something that where we can actually match you, but we would still be thrilled to have you apply to our college through any one of the other ways of applying with the QuestBridge application. So all of these here are, again, are the different avenues and different ways of how you can get together or get to these institutions. And know that any one of these identities that you may take on throughout this process is going to be totally okay. If you don't get matched, you get a little bit of time to be, you know, sad and just be, I guess, somewhat learn to be at peace with not being able to be matched. But again, know that these institutions have to admit other students who are not just QuestBridge match scholars. And a lot of these institutions will allow you to roll over and use your QuestBridge application as a way to apply to the college in general. So any one of these routes or identities that you're going to take and you're going to navigate to our institutions, it's totally okay. And again, once you come to our institutions, the title of a non-finalist or a non-matched finalist doesn't really go with you. It kind of stays there in the application process. And you can still come and be a part of you won't be an official Questie, but you can be a Questie at heart, and those are definitely students who do well and come to each one of our institutions. I'm now going to pass it over to my colleague Windsor at Swarthmore, and he will talk about his section.
Hello, folks. I'm Windsor Jordan from Swarthmore College. And just like Carolyn just said, there's a couple questions that I think a QB applicant should keep in mind as they're going through this process. So Carolyn just mentioned the parental contribution portion. Again, there are lots of great students who will apply to all of our institutions through the match, but students who have that low parental contribution are students who might get matched, not because they're not great, not because y'all are awesome, because that match is really used for those students who have that lower parental contribution, which is how much parents can afford to spend on their students' education. Another kind of thing we want folks to think about too is the expected family contribution and what that is. And your EFC is sometimes the language that we use in the admissions world to describe the expected estimated family contribution. And you can find that what that is for yourself. Lots of our institutions, all of them who get money from the federal government for financial aid, do have net price calculators on our websites. And this is a tool you can use to type in information about your family in terms of income, assets, and that'll pop out a number that will estimate your family contribution towards your education in the financial aid package as well. So it'll give you a ballpark about what that financial aid package will look like. So that's a tool you should be using when thinking about any school you're applying to, but certainly the QuestBridge partner schools as well. Another thing to be thinking about as students who are going through the QuestBridge process is how to use your match list. So like others just said in our presentation, you're able to list up to 12 schools on your match list. You don't have to fill all 12 slots, but like Remy said, use those slots really, really well. And it's certainly a good idea to list schools who you find great connection with, right? All the college partners here are really amazing institutions who offer all types of different opportunities. Do your research, dive deeply in to each institution. You go to our virtual events that we might be having this fall. Talk to us, email us, get to know our schools as best you can, but list schools on that match list you really find connection with, because of course the match is binding, right? And so if you are a match with an institution, you really want to make sure it's an institution you're going to be excited about and really, really happy with to be at for a year. So do your good research, use those 12 spots really well in that match process. You don't have to use all 12. And then what happens if you're not selected as a finalist? So the first thing to know, like I think others have said in the presentations, that your process is not over. There's still more to do. There's still more ways you can connect with colleges and get to know us. So it doesn't end if you're not selected as a finalist. You can still apply to other partner colleges using your QuestBridge application through early action process, early decision processes, and for regular decision as well. And again, we all have a generous financial aid packages. We need 100% determined need. And some of us also have loan-free financial aid packages as well. So it can be really disappointing sometimes not to be listed as a finalist. But again, that doesn't mean your process is over. And your journey continues. You're still able to apply these institutions, and you're likely to get, if admitted, likely to get financial aid packages that are comparable to what you might receive as a match student. So again, it can be some disappointment there, but I encourage you to pick yourselves back up. You're still connected with these institutions. You can still use that QuestBridge application that you spent so much time on to apply to our institutions. And for all of these college partners on this call, and again, all the ones listed on the college partner page, have many QuestBridge folks on their campuses who didn't go through the match at all, right? Who applied regular or early decision or early action process and are walking around the campuses happy students. So don't let that disappointment of not being selected as a finalist end your process. Pick yourself back up and keep on moving along. Next, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Stephanie over at Williams.
Thanks, Windsor. Perfect segue. So hi, I'm Steph Gonzalez at Williams College. And what happens if you're not a matched finalist? I think a lot of times there's a lot of disappointment here, right? Windsor just talked about you might not get matched because of the parental contribution associated. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get a great financial aid package from your QuestBridge partner colleges, but it just means that we might not be able to match you. We might also just need to wait and see what the rest of the applicant pool looks like. We're not able to make that commitment for the match quite yet, but we're still really excited to see your application in early decision or regular decision. So what happens next? Now what? You can roll that application to early decision. At some schools that might be ED1. At most it will be early decision 2, ED2. Or you can roll it to regular decision. In order to do that, you'll want to fill out the school-specific individual forms, which will be available to you via email. They'll also be available to you on the QuestBridge website. So the QuestBridge website does go through a lot of the information that we've covered here. It just doesn't give you some of the context and tips and tricks that we're covering in this session. So please use that website, the QuestBridge website, as a resource as you're kind of going through these processes. If you get stuck at a certain point, it can always be a really helpful piece. Will I submit my QB app, or do I want to make edits and submit another application? This is kind of the question that I have in my mind in this step 2. Should I submit the QB app, or should I submit another one? By and large, you can use your QuestBridge application and it can work perfectly for regular decision or early decision. If you feel like, you know, I actually have some tweaks and edits that I want to make after QuestBridge. I was one of those students that didn't listen to Remy. I threw my application in at midnight on the deadline. There were tons of typos. It definitely wasn't my best work, and I know I can do better. Then maybe you might consider using a different application platform instead. Otherwise, I think you're probably in pretty good shape to be able to submit your QuestBridge application and know that that's going to share all of that same additional context that we see for match applicants, except that you get it as an early decision or regular decision student. So that's definitely the plus to all of the work that you put into the QuestBridge essays. Trust me, it does pay off. We get to read all of that work, and we get to know way more about you in the application process than we would if you were applying with another application platform. So I'm not going to fully plug QuestBridge because, you know, you might be the student who says, I need to use the Common App or the Coalition app. I got to make those edits. That's totally fine. But I'd say for most students, I usually recommend the QuestBridge application just because it does give that additional texture and information. The other thing that I just want to mention here is, as a non-match finalist, another thing that's kind of next that somebody asked in the Q&A is thinking about schools that aren't on the QuestBridge Partner College list, right? And I hope that you're kind of already thinking about that now at this stage of your search process. The QuestBridge Partner Colleges are incredible. They are 42 of what I think are some of the best schools, not because of measures or rankings or numbers, but just because I think they're places that genuinely care about students and students' well-being and students' ability to succeed after college. That said, there are lots of schools that are not on the QuestBridge Partner Colleges list that also have those same values. So don't feel like this is it. This is my 42 and I can't possibly think about other schools beyond this, especially if you get that non-match information. If in December, if you get that sort of sad news about not getting matched, don't feel like, oh no, I'm not going to college. That is absolutely not the answer that we want for you. We know that you are all really, really incredible applicants. Whether it is at a QuestBridge Partner College or a different institution, you're going to be successful wherever you head off to. So don't feel limited to just these 42 beyond the match process. Really think broadly about your college search. So those are kind of our tips and tricks for non-matched finalists. I've seen that there are tons of questions coming in through the Q&A. So I'll turn it back to my colleague, Carolyn, to get us started here. You're muted.
I thought I had Zoom down packed. Alas, I do not. So I guess I'll ask Jasmine first. I registered for September and October SATs, but I think California has a high chance of canceling tests. I am unable to go to another state because my parents do not have time. How can I explain myself and additional information if I become a finalist?
Absolutely. So number one, you're not going to need to do too much explaining right now because we totally understand what's going on in the world. So a lot of schools this year, like we mentioned before, have shifted to a test optional policy. So that's one thing for you to do research on. So to look at the schools that are test optional. And for schools that are test optional, you need zero explanation. You just don't need to submit a test. For schools that are requiring testing still, that's going to be a little bit more complicated. But again, we in admission are real people and we are also living through what you are living through. Fortunately, we are not taking standardized testing alongside you right now, but we totally understand that things are going on. Test sittings are being canceled. So I would say if you want to put a little note in the additional information box, you can do that. You can just say, I was registered for this test, or I'm intending to take it at this point. But we are doing everything we can to remain human about this and be as flexible and understanding as we can because these circumstances are out of your control.
Thank you. Ryan, can we submit supplemental letters of recommendation until November 1st?
Excellent question. The answer to all admissions questions is it depends, but I think the real answer here is you don't need to. The reason that QuestBridge asks for the number of recommendations that it does and sends everything in one package to us is that we don't need more information than that, right? Supplement essays aside, we don't need more recommendations. You don't have to go out of your way to ask more teachers to write on your behalf. And I think it's really important to think about why you need that supplemental recommendation, right? Why you want it. Is it someone who's actually speaking to a different skill set that you have, a different part of your contribution to your school or your community? There are some schools that will accept supplemental recommendations, but sort of referring back to that timeline that we talked about earlier, it's really tight for us on our end. And we are reading your applications almost as soon as we get them, right? And so it really depends school to school, and that's a great question to ask. But I think it's also the bigger takeaway is that we have what we need in the QuestBridge application and don't feel like a sense of pressure to add to that. And it's really important to know that we trust the information you're giving us and we have a lot of experience among all of us here. We have decades of experience to really build a picture of who you are and make a really informed decision.
Thank you. That was great. Don't send in things if you don't feel like it. Go outside and, enjoy the weather if it's nice outside. Do colleges know whether a finalist was selected as a QuestBridge Prep Scholar or not?
Technically, yes. So here's what I'll say, right? A couple things. Yes, because QuestBridge sends us the data on that, right? As someone reading an application, right? So let me echo what Ryan said. It depends, right? Only in the sense that colleges choose to populate different information that exists in their database when they are reading applications, right? So we all have the information. Whether or not I'm reading your application and I see that displayed prominently depends on whether you tell me, right? It really depends on the school, right? For example, at Carleton, we have it displayed, right? So we see it, but I don't know if that's the case for every single school, right? Let me answer the question that I think you're asking. So one, should you tell us if you were a college prep scholar? Yes. Number two, are you going to be penalized for not being a college prep scholar? No, right? I think those are some of the questions you're really getting at, right? We don't inherently look at college prep scholars as better or more qualified potential matches than other students in the match round.
Thank you. Windsor, can you submit the same essay of the National College Match for regular decision round, and is it recommended?
Yeah, so you're welcome to submit same essay that's in your QuestBridge application if you like to. But if you're submitting other applications, maybe you didn't match, so you're submitting a common application or a coalition application, that might be a time to update your essay if you wanted to. Some of our institutions also have supplemental essays that we might be asking you to submit as well. So that would be another time to share something different about yourself in those supplemental essays that we might ask if you didn't match and have an opportunity to submit another form. So you can use that space to tell us even more about yourself that you didn't have an opportunity to in the other application spaces, in the QB application spaces as well. Again, you don't want to, there's a lot in the QuestBridge application already, but you can, if you're submitting a common application or a coalition application, take an opportunity to update and tell us more about yourself, and certainly supplemental questions that we might be asking you as well. We'll give you a space to do that too.
Thank you. Steph, will QuestBridge schools meet 100% of demonstrated need regardless of whether we apply through the QuestBridge application or not?
Good question. So these 6 colleges that you have in front of you right now, we will meet 100% of demonstrated need, regardless of how you choose to apply to us, which round you choose to apply to us. If you're coming to our schools, we are going to make sure that we meet 100% of demonstrated need for you and your family, regardless of how you got to us in the application process. That's also the case at many I'd even go as far as to say most of the QuestBridge partner colleges, though I'm not going to claim to say that I've done enough research on all 42 that I can guarantee that that's the case in every step of the process at all of the partner colleges. So it's a good question to ask if you are thinking about not applying through QuestBridge, or if you're thinking about just applying regular decision, to check in with each of the partner colleges or do a quick search on the QuestBridge website or on their websites to get a sense of how they package financially for different rounds.
Thank you. Ryan, I think this is a great question for you, having worked at Bowdoin and being the first test optional school in the United States. Can you talk about how testing is used when you're reading an application, it's there, and then when it's not on an application, how can you assess the academic viability of a candidate with or without testing?
Yeah, I am super happy to get this question. Thank you. I will step up onto my soapbox and I will let you know when I'm stepping down. It's not going to be for a little bit though. I want to be really, really clear about this, that even when you submit your testing, and even when testing is required, it is the least interesting piece of information that we have about you. I have never once gone up to any of my friends and colleagues here or anywhere and said, "Hi, I'm a 1400." What does that mean? It means nothing, right? Your test score is how you take a test. And it's how you took one test on one day of your life for 4 hours. It's not who you are. It's not how you think. It's not how you solve problems. It's not how you've overcome obstacles. It's not who you're going to be on our campus. And so that idea of being test optional is freedom, right? It's freedom for you to choose how you best want to represent yourself in the application. And if testing is a part of that, wonderful. What a great skill to have. And if it's not, I never have the time nor the desire to guess at what your test score might have been that you are trying to hide from me. And I'll be honest, I work at Bowdoin, I went to Bowdoin, and I applied to Bowdoin test optional because I am a terrible standardized test score. I get super nervous. I hear a sound in the room that's distracting, and then I forget what I'm thinking about. I have to start all over again. And I don't think that that number really influenced my time at Bowdoin College. And I would argue for everybody here that that test score didn't follow them to the experience, right? So I want to be really, really clear that all of that is universal when a school says they are test optional. And these schools here are really thinking about who you are as a person, the potential you have in the future, who you might be on their campus, how you might contribute to their community, and not, oh my gosh, is that 30 going to be a great math student? No one's thinking that. In terms of how it's used in the review process, that depends on the school that you're applying to, because again, it depends, everything depends. But universally true here is that it is not who you are, and it is the least interesting thing that we know about you in the review process. And I will step back off of my soapbox now.
Thank you. I loved the passion behind that answer. I feel the same way. Remy, so you talked about letting students or letting admissions officers know that students are QuestBridge Prep Scholars. How and where can students let us know that they were a part of or selected for the QuestBridge Prep Scholar program?
Yeah, so there's a couple spots you can do this. I think most frequently I see it in like honors and awards sections, right? You can put it in your list of activities as well, right? Like we all know there's a lot that goes into being a QuestBridge applicant broadly, right? So that's an okay place to put it too. There's also an additional information section in every application you will ever touch, right? Like not just the QuestBridge one. So that's fine as well, right? Like I think in general, let us know. I would also say, let the people writing on your behalf know, right? So that if it's relevant to the letters that they're writing for you, they can take that information into account.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So Windsor, there are a couple of questions here that are asking about how students, or if we as institutions see all of the lists or the list of the ranked schools, or if we know like what's going on. Are we in cahoots with one another when we're reading applications?
We are not. So we have no idea what other schools you might be ranking. We have no idea what our colleagues or other institutions are doing with students in their applicant pool. So we have no idea. And again, like I think Carolyn said, we turn our stuff over to QuestBridge, and they work their, I think Remy said, their algorithm magic. So we don't know. So we're not in cahoots. We're really sitting this year possibly at home reading QuestBridge applications and trying to find students who might be good fits for our individual institutions and sitting in committees and making decisions that way. And so it really is a process. When you think about your college list, think about the college you want to list, think about what colleges are going to be good fits for you, what things are going to be important to you, and what you want to get out of your 4 years in college, and what colleges can serve you best. And those are the things you want to be focused on. And everything else will take care of itself if you do some of that good work. But no, we are not in cahoots at all.
Thank you. I think sometimes people are like, oh, you know, it's like, no, we're actually happy when we see, well, not happy, we're a little bit heartbroken when we see students go to these other colleges, but we know that these other, especially these 6 colleges here, are incredible institutions and will support these students in every way. Steph, how heavily do financial aid packages differ between students who go through the match process and students who are either going through ED or RD for these meet 100% of need institutions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's going to vary a little depending on your family's circumstances. So we've been talking a little bit about this zero or low parental contribution, right? So what that essentially means is that if your family's EFC, their estimated family contribution is, let's just call it $0 for the sake of numbers that are easy, is $0. And the cost of tuition at our schools, we're going to average it out. We're going to say it's $70,000. We are going to make sure that we meet that full $70,000, whether you apply to us through QuestBridge as a match scholar, through regular decision, or through early decision. That part does not matter to us. If your parental contribution is, let's say, $10,000, at $10,000, now we're not going to likely be able to match with you, because at $10,000, your family is going to be expected to contribute that amount of money towards your education. But when it comes to regular decision and early decision, we're basically going to, again, for simple math, take $70,000, subtract 10, and cover that $60,000 with mostly institutional aid. And so that is going to be how your financial aid is packaged at any school that meets 100% of demonstrated need. They're essentially going to cover the rest of the cost. Where it gets a little tricky is that we all calculate numbers a little bit differently. We all have slightly different policies and practices, but that's some of the sort of inner workings of financial aid that is part of why you shop around and is part of why you compare different colleges and make a good financial decision for you and your families. What I can say I feel really confident about is that at all of these 6 schools, whether you apply through QuestBridge, early decision, or regular decision, you will have a financial aid package that makes attending our institutions affordable for you and your families. And if for some reason you don't, you should reach out to our financial aid advisors and have a conversation with them about where that gap is. So if they're saying, we expect your family to contribute $10,000, and you sit there and you look at your parents and you're like, there's no way, then you should reach back out to the financial aid office at the schools that you're most interested and do what we call appeal your financial aid award, and ask for them to reconsider, to get a sense as to why they might have gotten to that number, how you actually manage your finances, and where there's a disconnect, how these two things are not matching up. Sometimes financial aid advisors make mistakes, not often, but sometimes they do. So appeals in the financial aid process are certainly a welcome piece in regular decision, and even in early decision, for you to kind of make sure that that's the right package for you. So definitely feel free to take advantage of those next steps, and always be proactive in communicating to financial aid advisors. So that might mean sending out an email pretty quickly to each of your financial aid offices at the schools that you're applying to, whether that's for the match or for early decision or regular decision, just to give them an update. So, hey, my parent lost their job, or we had to pay these health expenses, or whatever it might be that has been an update to your family's financial circumstances. The more proactive that you can be with that information, the better it is for making sure that we're meeting your full need as a family.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Steph. I think that's a really great place to end. I would now like to ask all of my colleagues at these other institutions to give one piece of advice to these young people as they go through the college application process. I will start so that I know I kind of like maybe blindsided y'all with this. If you have questions for each one of us individually, as you can see here, there are ways that you can reach out and learn more about our specific individual QuestBridge process. And what the estimated family contribution is. So please feel free to reach out to any one of these schools. All of us, we're really excited to help. But my one piece of advice would be, and this isn't just for the circumstances that we're in, but always make sure that you are taking a step back and realizing that this is solely your opportunity to find a school that is the best fit for you. Whether your friends are going to, I'm from Alabama, I live in Auburn, so all my friends went to Auburn and they're like, where are you going? I'm like, yes, I love you, but that's not a fit for me. Make sure that you're finding a school that fits you, and understand that fit comes in a lot of different ways, whether it's academic fit, whether it's financial fit, whether it's fit with your specific major. That one, I think you can, liberal arts colleges can suffice and support a lot of academics. So maybe not just your academic major, but make sure that the school that you're looking at does fulfill the most important needs that you're trying to get out in terms of fit. And also remember to breathe. It's a really, really wild time that we're living in, and I hope that you are all being kind to yourself through this hectic time that we're in. And Jasmine, I'll pass it off to you.
Thanks. So I want to echo the breathe because you're all amazing, and the college application process, through QuestBridge or not, can be incredibly stressful and overwhelming. That doesn't mean that you're not amazing or not well equipped or well prepared to handle it. The other piece of advice I would give, and I think that QuestBridge is a great way to start doing this, is start early. Just give yourself time so that it's not a mad rush, so that you do have some more time to, spend time breathing, but also just to let things ruminate and let yourself figure out what makes most sense for you, because it's going to be a different process for each and every one of you. And that's what the beauty of the process is. And so the more that you can give yourself space for that, the better.
Brian?
Yeah, I will echo everybody's breathe and amazing advice so far. And I'll add to the breathe with find time to celebrate. You are taking this moment and filling out these applications, and it can feel big, right? But think about all that you have accomplished. Think about the fact that you get to write down what you have achieved over the last 3.5 years and what you have overcome to achieve that. And I think this is a moment to really celebrate all that you have done so far and think about all that you are going to do in the future. And so if you flip the script, and instead of thinking about it as like, oh my gosh, this is too big and I don't know where to start, and say, it's time to find the things I'm going to celebrate, then it brings joy to the work that you're doing. And it brings so much meaning and sense of accomplishment to everything that you've done and everything that you will do. So my advice is to find joy.
Thanks. Remy?
I would encourage all of you to put as much of yourselves as you can into the application, right? I think authenticity is something that reads well, no matter what school you're applying to. I also think there's a disproportionate number of us who identify as underrepresented people, particularly looking at some of these elite institutions, right? Who think that we are not good enough as we are to be at these places, right? We make the mistake of thinking colleges want someone who is smarter or who has done research or who has taken harder classes or who is X, Y, or Z, right? And I want to be very clear. We want you as you are, right? So please put as much of yourself, all of you, into your application as you can.
Thank you. I want to give you snaps for that. Windsor, can you enlighten the young people here?
Yes, I'll echo what others, y'all are getting really great advice from these folks. So the other thing I'll add, is that you are already amazing. Sometimes this college process feels like it's, you're trying to prove that you're amazing. And so I want to tell you that you're already wonderful, amazing, gracious, beautiful people that will go off and do all wonderful, amazing, gorgeous, beautiful things no matter where you land in college. And the other thing I'll raise up too is as you're going through this college process, whether it's through the match process, looking at colleges outside the partner colleges, is to be thinking about, what are at these colleges that are going to help me thrive and be supported. So if you're a first generation student, if you're a low income student, if you're a student of color, if you're a undocumented student or a DACA student, be thinking about what resources, what is this college going to be like for people who walk through the world like I walk through the world, right? What is it going to be for people who have the background, similar to my background? Ask those questions of admissions officers, ask those questions of students, current students at the colleges you're thinking about, figure out what the place is going to be like for people who walk through the world like you walk through the world.
And last but certainly not least, Steph.
So as cheesy as it is, I'm going to end with the QuestBridge slogan, dream big. And I would like to give you that piece of advice as it sort of echoes what everyone has already said, but the sky's kind of the limit at this stage in your process. And this can be a really incredible time for you to really dream big and think about all of the ways that life could be pretty different. School could be pretty different than anything that you might have otherwise imagined. And I'd like to go back to give that advice to myself at 17, but since I can't do that, I'll give it to you all. So best of luck with your next steps.
Well, thank y'all so much for joining us. We hope that y'all stay safe, and we look forward to reading your applications. Bye.